Is EA, Electronic Arts, one of the biggest publishers in the world, on the verge of losing their license with Disney for the Star Wars games? Oh man, if this rumor is true, could be a huge one. What is going on, guys? Randall Thor 19, the man with the million, back again with another video. And yeah, this story is a few days old, but I, as a subscriber, want me to give my thoughts on this whole situation and who I think would be perfect to make a Star Wars game outside of EA. So we're going to talk about all that stuff right now. Now, as everybody knows, EA got the license back in 2013, exclusive license to create and publish Star Wars games all the way up to 2022. So that they got it in 2013. There's only really been 2 Star Wars games in the 5 years since, so they really haven't been doing very well. And if you're unhappy about the current state of Star Wars, this story might be for you, because there might be other developers and publishers getting involved. Now, the first game that EA published under the deal was Star Wars Battlefront, which sold extremely well, but there was a large backlash for the fact that it didn't really feature a single-player campaign. Star Wars fans salivated at the idea of having a Star Wars campaign, because there hasn't been many Star Wars games recently. In fact, before LucasArts shut down, they were making that Star Wars 1313 game, and people were like, this looks amazing. But Disney decided that it was easier to sell the license to a publisher rather than make the games themselves, which is why EA got the license. So Star Wars Battlefront 1, backlash for not having the campaign, but it sold extremely well. Roll on Battlefront 2, and oh man, it was a shitstorm for EA. It didn't sell as well as the first game, primarily because of the microtransactions and loot boxes. Gamers were completely upset with the idea of the loot boxes holding back the progression in the multiplayer, and they were protesting the game, they were boycotting the game, and EA had projected 10 million sales for the holiday period, and they only were able to sell 7. Even though EA stock has recovered, the game obviously wasn't going to meet the goals that EA had set for it. But it gets even deeper than that, because all this, the negative stigma, kind of affected Star Wars to a certain degree. And you know Disney wants to protect their huge $4 billion investment in Star Wars. It's the king. They don't want any bad news or, articles about gambling touching their huge franchise. But the loot box story continued to grow. It wasn't enough that gamers, hardcore gamers, decided to rally against it, but governments, US government and other governments around the world, decided to look into the practice of these loot boxes and talked about how these might be predatory, and maybe they need to intervene and regulate some of that stuff so kids don't get addicted to the predatory nature of loot boxes. So it was nothing but just dark clouds around Battlefront 2. Game didn't sell what they thought it should. It brought on a negative stigma for the Star Wars brand in general. It got governments involved, potentially trying to maybe regulate this whole loot box nonsense. So it was just bad all around. And since Star Wars has been here, since it's come back, since Disney bought it, it's dominated everything. The big screen, Force Awakens and the new movie have like the highest opening weekend ever. Both of those movies making billions of dollars, dominating the big screen, comics, novels, you name it, it's dominating everywhere. But it's kind of lacking in gaming. And considering EA got this license in 2013 and we've only seen 2 games, it's kind of worrying. Now, Visceral, who was working on a Star Wars game, which was supposed to come out this year because there is no Star Wars release, because that was kind of the plan. EA and Disney had this plan of releasing a Star Wars game every year, but they haven't been able to fulfill that. 1, because games are expensive to make, and 2, because games take a long time to make. Well, Visceral shut down, and Amy Hennig was working on a very story-driven Star Wars game, which was codenamed Ragtag. And it was supposed to be released this year. It was supposed to be one of EA's biggest, releases, and supposed to be the big Star Wars game for 2018. But that's out the window. They're closed down. And fans are very disappointed, upset, worried about the future of Star Wars in the hands of EA. Because the Battlefront games haven't done it. Right? Even though the first one sold extremely well, the second one, it's on the decline. Fans are upset. They want somebody else to take over the franchise. And I guess this is, the complaints have heard, they've gone all the way up to Lucasfilm and Disney. And they're looking at enacting certain clauses in the contracts to maybe terminate it completely or somehow wiggle their way out of that contract to shop the games around to interested publishers. And this is where, I want you guys to kind of comment below. If somehow it was in the best interest for Disney and Lucasfilm to get out of the contract with EA, who would you want to see make some great Star Wars games? Now, this report says that Disney has been talking and reached out to both Ubisoft and Activision about developing Star Wars games. Now, those are probably two of the other biggest publishers in the world, and honestly, I'd rather have Ubisoft publish Star Wars games more than Activision, because I think Ubisoft has more quality developers under their belt than Activision does, because if you just look at it on the face value, Ubisoft has the Rainbow Six Siege team, the Assassin's Creed team at Ubisoft Montreal, which has like 1,000 employees, the Ghost Recon team. They have many different games they could make, and they can do many different types of Star Wars games rather than just a first-person shooter or, a third-person shooter that Star Wars Battlefront is. Ubisoft has the breadth of studios out there that can make different type of Star Wars games. The question is, would Ubisoft be interested in making a Star Wars game? They're focused on making their own IPs. They really don't license out any games like EA does, like with Madden and FIFA and all that stuff. So would Ubisoft be interested? Would you want Ubisoft to, put aside Rainbow, put aside Ghost Recon, put aside Assassin's Creed, and make an open world Star Wars game, for example, instead of an Assassin's Creed game, or a first-person shooter Star Wars game instead of Rainbow Six Siege? Let me know what you think in the comments, because I'm interested in hearing. And the other one they talk about is Activision. Now, we all know Activision runs Call of Duty, once a year with 3 different developers. This year, on the docket is Treyarch's game, Sledgehammer released last year with their, Call of Duty World War II, and the other developer on it is Infinity Ward. It's possible, if Activision got it, they could take one of those developers off of Call of Duty, put them on Star Wars, but then maybe you don't get Call of Duty every year. Maybe they use Raven, who's a support studio, and have them make it. I mean, I know Bungie is with Activision right now for Destiny. They and Bungie has their hands full already with working and trying to fix Destiny, that they probably wouldn't even bother touching Star Wars. So what are the developers Activision has? Blizzard does what Blizzard does. I mean, I guess it's possible Blizzard could do something, but they're interested in growing Overwatch, running Hearthstone, doing Diablo stuff, World of Warcraft stuff, that I can't see them being like, yeah, this is a good move for us. So I don't know. I don't really see Ubisoft and Activision being that interested in making Star Wars games. But for me, a dream project for Star Wars would be like Jedi Knight coming back and having CD Projekt Red make that game. I would love it if I could get a proper Star Wars RPG. Maybe not necessarily Knights of the Republic, and I know a lot of people want Knights of the Republic to come back, but something new done by the Witcher 3 devs. That would be absolutely amazing to me. I mean, it's possible, if Disney were to cut the price of the license, because it is expensive, and these are only the big third-party developers and publishers are talking to, because it's going to cost a lot of money to get the license. But if you could give it to Microsoft, maybe have the Coalition work on a Star Wars game, maybe have 343 work on a Star Wars game. Hell, you could give it to Sony. Have them get Naughty Dog to work on a really great Star Wars game. But then again, the license is way too much for any first party to work on, because they would need to sell it to all the platforms to make their money back. So that's a pipe dream. But my wish is for CD Projekt Red to make a new Star Wars RPG, kind of like Knights of the Old Republic, because that Knights of the Old Republic is one of my favorite games, and to see that kind of come back by one of the best RPG developers out there would be amazing. Otherwise, I really can't see Ubisoft and Activision taking it, and honestly, I don't really see Disney pulling out of their deal with EA anyways. But let me know what you think. Do you think Ubisoft and Activision are good choices? Or if you have your own choice, let me know what you think, or what developer or publisher you want, and what type of Star Wars game. You looking for a first-person shooter, third-person, action RPG? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button. Sub to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the notifications so you're always notified when I drop new content. Share it out on Twitter, all that good stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see everybody in the next video. Later, guys.